Hey everybody, we are about to start Unit 4. Unit 4 is about political beliefs and behaviors. And so we're going to start today by exploring the basics of political beliefs in America. This is going to be a really easy set of things to discuss because this is the stuff we've been discussing all year already. So today we're going to talk about political ideologies. We're going to really kind of simplify and kind of try to make like a real basic philosophy for what liberals and conservatives believe about the government. So, we'll be talking about all sorts of things about liberals and conservatives over the course of this unit, and we'll be talking about liberal and conservative ideas about different policies and stuff like that. What we see in the picture here is something we'll go through over the next few days. We'll kind of look at where we can find liberals and conservatives, like where the numbers of people are and what it is that makes up the population of the United States so that we can better predict what's going to happen in elections and things like that. Oh, thank God for learning objectives. We get to start off a brand new unit with a brand new learning objective. And what we're going to do today, we are going to describe American attitudes about government and politics. And basically, that means we're going to explore what liberals and conservatives think. And what we want to be able to do with that, we want to be able to explain how the public influences the policy making process. So this is all about what people think and what people think policies ought to be. And over the course of the next few sets of notes, we'll explore how people influence that policymaking process, how they turn their ideas into policy. So today we'll just explore what does the public think about government and politics. So today we are going to focus on political ideologies. We need to start first by figuring out what exactly an ideology means, and we'll look at how the ideologies are spread out across the United States, and then we will take a deeper exploration into what it is our conservative guy on the left thinks and what it is our liberal guy on the right thinks. All right, a political ideology, if I define it, it's very simple. This is a set of beliefs. That's it. These are people's beliefs about what they think that the government should do, what they think the role of the government should be, what they think the goals of the government are. These ideologies, they deal with how people, like, if they think change needs to happen or if they think things are fine the way they are. They deal with how change should happen. These are ideas about policies and politics and goals and purposes, and it's about what the government does. So we'll be exploring a lot about a few different ideologies in America, focus on our main two, liberals and conservatives. And with each of those groups, we want to find out what they think the government's job should be and what they think the government should be doing. Do they think the government should change? And how do they think that the government should be changing? Let's talk about what I didn't say. Political ideologies have nothing to do with a particular person. These are not about like a government official that you like. That's going to be stuff that we talk about when we get to political parties. So ideology is about your ideas about the policy. This is not about which people you think are the best to be in charge. This is about what you think the policy should be and what you think the government should be working for. So this is not about the battles between Democrats and Republicans, although at the moment in the United States, we tend to be in a moment where all conservatives are Republican and all liberals are Democrat. That is not always the case in the United States, but ideological battles are about ideas and they are not about parties. They are not about elections. So when we're talking about ideologies, we're talking about what people think that the government should do. So they focus on what the government should do and not about who the government should be. Who the government should be is the focus of a political party. What the government should be doing is what a political ideology is about. All right, so let's take a look at the political spectrum in America. And what that means is we're trying to put all of the ideologies on a map so that we can see what people believe, where they fit in comparison to each other, and all of that. So In 2021, I don't know how true this is anymore, especially, here we are 30 years into the internet era and people are making their own choices about the information they receive and all this kind of stuff. So this is pretty outdated, but this is still how we discuss political ideology. So we're going to imagine that the political spectrum in America looks just like this shape, that it looks just like what we call a bell curve. So what this chart will show us is that most Americans are closest to the middle, and very few Americans end up at either side of the extreme. And so, what this should tell us about politics in America is that most people in general are somewhere in the middle and should be able to agree with each other. There are very few people out at the extreme of either side who are going to have like ideas and thoughts that like are unwilling to compromise and all that. And we'll see how true this really is as we go through the rest of this section of notes. So here's some other things to keep in mind when we think of the political spectrum this way. First of all, most Americans, like we said, most Americans are in the middle, but those are not the people that are going to get attention from the media. If you think about it, a story about like a person who is a very moderate Democrat and a person who's a very moderate Republican coming to a compromise about something completely reasonable. That's the most boring news story in the world. So the people at the extremes get the most attention. The people at the extremes end up being the loudest voices in the media. So we tend to hear from, like, we tend to put a lot of attention on the most conservative people and the most liberal people, and they're going to get a disproportionate amount of the attention in the news. Their ideas are really going to be amplified, even though that's not what most Americans are thinking about. So the people that are out on the extremes are most likely to like they're definitely going to vote. They're definitely going to, donate to candidates. They might run for office, they might protest, they might do all sorts of different forms of participation. The people in the middle are not necessarily as motivated to do those things. Now, there are more people in the middle. So the politicians, like the people trying to win elections, since there are more people in the middle, the politicians aim to attract that voter in the middle. If you look at this chart as showing us, how many Americans there are in each zone, a smart politician aims for the middle because that's where most of the voters are. You can't win an election by being out on either extreme here because there are not enough votes for you. So looking at the spectrum this way, this is how it works. When we're discussing American ideologies, we're going to start from the right. So out on the far right side, that's what we'd call the far right. Obviously on the far left side, we call that the far left. And we use these terms right and left to discuss ideologies in America. So at the far extreme on the right of this spectrum, on the far right side, those people want as little government as possible. And as you move to the left, people want more and more government. And as you get to the far left extreme, those people want as much government control as possible. So the people on the left tend to want the government to control more things. Like they want the government to have a lot of control over people. And people on the right want the government to have less control over things. They want the government to have less control in all sorts of different arenas. Now, we'll talk about the goals in a minute, but those people on the right, their focus is making sure that people have the most freedom. And those people on the left, their focus tends to be on making sure that people are treated equally. So like they both have a reasonable goal, and that's why they think the government ought to be the way they see it. So as we're looking at this spectrum, people on the right want small government, as little government as possible. People on the left want as much government as possible. And most Americans are somewhere in between. Most Americans want more government than people on the extreme right, but less government than people on the extreme left. So just in case it hadn't already clicked, those groups that we're talking about on the right, they want small amounts of government. Those are groups that we call conservative. People on the left, they want more government control. Those people are called liberals. We tend to call conservatives the right And we tend to call liberals the left. And most Americans, we will find right there in the middle, we'll call them moderates. And while we're not really focusing on political parties yet, it is important that we understand the similarities here. So when we are talking about these groups as voters, and when we are talking about these groups when it comes time to talk about elections, we're going to focus on political parties. And so liberals, people that have liberal ideologies, almost all of them are going to associate themselves with the Democratic Party. Conservatives, people that want small government, almost all of them are going to associate themselves with the Republican Party. Moderates, people that are truly in the middle, people that truly don't think of themselves as a set of liberal ideas or a set of conservative ideas, we call those independent voters. And we'll talk a lot more about independent voters in the future, but like just because a person says they're independent, like the most conservative people in the world and the most liberal people in the world call themselves independent. And that's not who we're talking about. We're talking about actual people with moderate ideologies. They have some liberal ideas and some conservative ideas. But when we're talking about these groups as voters, we're talking about Democrats and Republicans and independents. When we're talking about their ideas, we're talking about liberals and conservatives with moderates in the middle. All right, now we know what political ideologies are. Now we can take some time to talk about like how people get there and what those people believe. So we're about to explore political socialization, and then we're going to take a look at what do moderates, liberals, and conservatives believe.